Hey guys, Mathel here once again, and I was back to last epoch with one more character, I think. Probably just one more, but it's something I was trying to work on before I stopped last time, and that is a dual wield Primalist. And it is a Beastmaster this time around because I figured out last time that contrary to what I thought, which was like, I'm going to play Shaman and have all this dual wielding coolness, the actual play is for Beastmaster because it's got all these like buffs and like reasons to actually make dual wield flail a true sort of playstyle and archetype. And that's kind of what this is in the end. It is a build that is dual wielding. It is one that just tries to attack really fast, and in the end also procs Earthquake's Aftershocks thanks to the relics. It's not super flashy and it's not super screen blasty and it's very melee, but it's been pretty fun regardless and has taken me all the way through to like 20 Aberroth kills in the end because I had a bunch of those keys, and then I learned the fight on this character with like, I don't know, let's say 7 deaths to Aberroth, and then finally dialed in all the mechanics. Had to learn them for the first time since my Heartseeker character didn't need to know a single fucking mechanic, whereas this one needed to time everyone to fucking perfection because melee. But yes, once we got that down, it started being kind of reliable and pretty kind of fun to go through. All that said, yep, it's a reliable, solid enough character that has gone up to 300-ish corruption so far. I'll obviously still like just completely get obliterated and humiliated by an Uber Aberroth attempt at some point, but it's just not going to go well, right? Because I am barely squeaking across the line with this character right now as what I would consider an ethical melee build on the Aberroth kills, and the Uber's going to be something entirely different and stupid, and I do want to make some assessments of what that fight kind of is. On a pretty normal character, because I think the game at the moment just has a few outliers when it comes to balance, and also one boss fight when it comes to balance. But other than that, there's plenty of cool, fun builds that you can play that can take you pretty far, and aren't particularly busted or doing anything in a busted fashion. So that's what you're seeing kind of here. But it is, once again, kind of highlighting to me a bit of a frustrating melee experience because in Path of Exile 1, as we know, melee is always kind of playing second fiddle, or at least typically was, but you have the tools at your disposal to kind of solve those problems and just be less melee, basically. That's usually the actual solve, or have way more damage than you'll ever need. With this type of stuff, it's pretty hard to not be melee. That's kind of the biggest problem here. There was almost nothing I could do with this style of character that I built using, I think it's called Temper Strike, something like that. My default attack. There's almost nothing I could do to really make myself not melee. I spec the area, I try and get some area, and at the end of the day, I'm still basically point blank melee. So I got no choice but to like learn all these mechanics, and got no choice but to just do the timings the right way. The good thing that we have going for us here is defenses can be fairly solid. I don't have the best of defense yet, and it's still pretty damn tanky, and it can still get tankier, and then Leech just tops you up to like full pretty damn quick, so my sustain is insane as well. So we do have some good things going for us, but then we've of course got some bad things where we're just like very melee, and in some cases just waiting for our chance to do any damage because that's what the game is telling us to do. Either way, yep, pretty fun character. It can be a bit stronger. I'm playing the SSF versions where, I've got to make my own stuff, and most of my stuff is like single legendary potential slammed, and just with 2 legendary potential on my weapons, for example. On one of my weapons, I could probably like double my damage, and with lots of other little upgrades, I could damn near double my tankiness. But for what it is, we've done pretty well, I think, and it's been fairly fun. So yeah, this is just one of the Aberroth kills that ended up, farming. Like I said, it took me like 5 or 6 deaths, just like running in, getting halfway through the fight, dying, that sort of thing, until I fully learnt what everything from the fight is, because a lot of it's not super obvious, the debuffs, the things that happen, the timings and stuff. And then once you get that down, it's, much more of a learned fight. So it does have its bullshit, it does have a whole bunch of stuff going on, but once you actually learn what's going on, it makes a bit more sense. I'm not sure that's going to be the same case for Uber Aberroth, but we'll have to just wait and see about that one. Hopefully wait and see, because we do have to grind a little bit more, and also try the 10-way Harbinger thing, which is also particularly hard for ethical characters, let's call them. So with that, yep, let me go ahead and show you how I built this character, and just talk a bit about the entire build as a whole. So here's currently my character, level 95 Flail. Flail is just an emote with, lots of attacking. Yeah, it's a Beastmaster, which is a Primalist sort of start, and it's possibly one of like the most outdated classes or trees of the game at the moment, but it does have some redeeming features to it. And the one I've gone for here is Beastmaster, because as I said, it's got a lot of sort of buff effects and just things that make your attack faster and your melee combat a bit more durable. Like for example, the aspect of the ball, which gives you, a lot of extra damage reduction. That's one of the things that you can like kind of like a fortify, keep you in there and give you a bunch more tankiness. From what I've seen, this is still nowhere near as tanky as Sentinels and Void Knight, but there are some good tools at your disposal to do a bunch more and get a lot more out of the character. For melee anyway. So other things that we were also doing is actually nothing. We're specking here so we can get Earthquake, because the build did end up originally I was just trying to flail as hard as I could with Temper Strike, and that's kind of how it did shape up. But once we started getting some of these, chance to create Aftershock under nearby enemy on melee attack, it was evident that it was going to do a lot of our damage, and we started specking into Earthquake as well. I was using a companion this entire time, up till like literally Aberroth kills, and that's because I was also trying to take advantage of Cry of the Lynx, and at the same time just have buff from a minion. So we had one minion, so I still need to unspec this, and I was using that instead of the Earthquake here. But once I tried out not having a minion, because that thing was just dying non-stop during Aberroth, I was then trying to just weave in Earthquakes to do extra damage. And it turns out it was quite a lot of extra damage during certain boss fights. Once all our buffs are up, it's quite a lot. So our mana, you can't really sustain Earthquake mana, so instead we do some attacking with the skill that gives us some mana there, and then weave in Earthquakes in between, and it hits really hard, so it ends up being a much more reliable way of getting through end bosses and higher corruption on this character. So you can learn from my sort of testing and mistakes, because to begin with, I didn't have this for 95 levels. I was just using a Lynx and then using the Aftershock, but now we're actually weaving in the Earthquake as well. It's quite substantially higher burst damage. So most of the characters kind of just based around dual wielding. So we've got an Irene with some extra crit multi. The fire damage over time doesn't really do anything. And the Irene is a pretty bad roll, but it doesn't really matter. It's mostly there to apply that debuff or the buff for ourselves for the extra crit multi. You don't necessarily have to do this one, I don't think, because we can get lots of crit multi otherwise, but it's still pretty hard to beat. And then there's the new sword that we can use, the Scissor of Atropos. Mine ended up rolling melee cold damage, which I don't really love or need, but it's still good. And then attack speed. So if we had like a crit roll instead, could put a 2 LP Irene with like attack speed and a crit roll, I'd double my crit, because my crit currently is only like 30, buffed up to maybe like 35 or 40 or something, and we'd double that and it'd be so much more reliable. But this is what I can do, and this is what we're at. I am using a Null Portent for Leech, for health, for strength, and then less damage taken if we're overcapping our res, and unfortunately Void is my only res that's currently like not even close to overcapped, but that's still something I'm working on as an SSF enjoyer. Just a bunch of like trying to get strength and life and stuff, because this character is based around, as you can see, strength and attunement scaling. So strength and attunement is the name of the game wherever we can get it. And we also do scale off of strength, attunement over here, which gives us even more damage. And then, yeah, that's kind of what this thing is doing. It's just there to give us a bunch of extra, procs and speed and damage. But the idea initially was that I was doing this lightning temper stuff, and I was kind of hybrid, but it just doesn't work. Like the spell scaling portion of it was doing so little that it just isn't worth specking anymore unless you're like really going heavy on the spell stuff. So we got rid of all of that, and it just became a fast attacking, proccing aftershock thing. So the leap slam can go pretty far. It does give some slight little buffs and stuff. So I'm using that for what it is, just a bit of extra damage and buffs and shit. But for the most part, it's just there to leap around. The Warcry can give quite a bunch of extra damage and also freeze things. So it's pretty reliable for interrupting bosses and, just giving a lot of extra damage. The Totem, Frenzy Totem, does die under most circumstances pretty quickly, but it gives us a lot of damage when it does go down. So we are using that one for Frenzy and also just for a bunch of extra damage whenever we can. And then the Earthquake is basically spec'd entirely for aftershock damage, which which is affected by the relics, well, idols, sorry. The idols, all that Earthquake aftershock stuff is benefited by the Earthquake spec. So we've also got, just one of these belts that is kind of shit at the moment. If it had some actual legendary potential, it'd be much better. Basically, there's probably a few things few choices I've made that I could probably be a bit tankier, like with a Brewmaster buckle, trying to still do some stuff with the boots, but this is what I've got. I'm using this guy here just for health, strength. But I could probably get the endurance relic that I'll most likely do. So I'll try and still level up the character a bit over the next day to take on Abberoth, but I just don't think that's going to happen because I probably need way more tankiness to be able to actually pull that off, or way more DPS. Either way, I do kind of want to figure out just how humbling of an experience it's going to be for a normal sort of character, and we'll see how things go there. But the other challenge is over here is where I was. There's a 10-way for Harbingers, which is quite a bit harder than regular Harbingers, and it's probably, or from what I've heard, basically the second hardest thing that you can do next to Abberoth, and I kind of want to do that as well. So we'll try and build up and pull that off, and then build up and try and die to Abberoth a bunch and see if there's any hope whatsoever. But for the most part, just need to make a few little more upgrades, which is tough to do as a SSF character sometimes, and hopefully we can get there. So that's the tree there. That's the tree there. That's the tree there, and then just a whole bunch of attack speed there. So, yep, that's Beastmaster. Pretty fun stuff. Very melee, very what I would consider ethical. So if you want to do something kind of similar, by all means, that's kind of what the setup is like. Level's pretty fun, and just, feels pretty normal melee experience. So if you're looking for a thicker melee experience, then maybe you want to play a Sentinel still, maybe some Void Knight action. But there's a few other little things you can do with this one, and maybe I can still try out the whole spell route. It could be kind of fun. But I think Primalist in general, like some of these trees and some of this stuff, just needs a bit of updating, bit new shiny coat of paint, and then it can also have the Sentinel rework, time in the sun kind of thing. Not sure if I'll play another character on Last Epoch. I'll think about it. Maybe we'll play some D4. Maybe we'll go back to PoE2. Really not sure what the future holds. We'll see how things go. I'm a multiple games enjoyer, so it's all good. But for now, that's the character. Thank you very much for watching. See you guys next time.